AITA for choosing my sick mom over my wife and kicking her out of a house she didn't own. I am a 45-year-old man, sitting in my living room, watching the soft evening light filter through the trees in the backyard. My mom, 72-year-old Evelyn, is asleep in the downstairs bedroom. The peaceful sound of her breathing fills the house in a quiet, comforting way. This is what a home should feel like. That peace, however, came at a high price. It followed 3 weeks of difficult decisions, heartbreak, and truths about my wife, 42-year-old Laura, that took me 20 years to finally accept. My dad passed away 6 months ago. In the wake of his loss, my mom's health declined rapidly. Years of managing diabetes became more difficult. Her arthritis worsened, and a fall last month made it frighteningly clear that she could no longer live alone in that old house, which was far too big for one person. My siblings and I had the conversation every family dreads. The options were an assisted living facility that felt like a cold, impersonal institution, or one of us taking her in. My brother lives in a 2-bedroom apartment 3 states away. My sister is caring for a special needs child. I, on the other hand, live in a large, 5-bedroom house with a full guest suite on the ground floor. For me, it was not a choice. It was a duty, a privilege. This woman raised me, made sacrifices for me her entire life. Of course, I would take care of her. I quietly made all the arrangements. I spoke with her doctors, organized for a home health aide to visit several times a week, and set up a financial plan to ensure she would want for nothing. The last step was to talk to Laura. I thought it would just be a discussion about logistics. I was naive. We sat at the large kitchen island, the same one she loved to proudly show off when our house was featured in a local lifestyle magazine. I explained the situation, the doctor's recommendations, and suggested that my mom move into the guest suite. I expected concern, maybe a few questions. What I got was ice. "Absolutely not," she said, her voice cold and emotionless. I was in shock. "What do you mean, absolutely not?" "Laura, she can't live alone anymore. It's not safe." "Then she can go to a nursing home," she replied, not even looking at me, focused on examining her nails. "That's what they're for. I'm not turning my life, my house, into a hospital. I'm not going to have my social schedule dictated by a sick old woman. I will not live with the smell of medicine and regret permeating my beautiful home." The cruelty of those words left me breathless. Her beautiful home. "Laura, we're talking about my mother." "And I'm your wife," she retorted, finally looking at me, her eyes full of rage. "I've built a life here for 20 years. I host events. My book club meets here. We entertain your clients here. I'm not going to become a full-time nurse. I refuse." The argument lasted for over an hour. Selfishness versus disbelief. Until, exhausted, I said, "She's my mom, and she's going to live here. It's not up for debate." Laura stood up, her face a rigid mask of fury, and pointed a trembling finger at me. "Fine. You want to make a choice? Then choose. Your sick mom cannot come live here. It's either her or me." The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. In that instant, 20 years of marriage just evaporated. I no longer saw the woman I married. I saw a cold stranger, capable of letting my mother waste away in an institution just so she wouldn't be inconvenienced. The choice she thought would be impossible was the easiest one of my life. My heart was breaking, but my path was clear. I looked at her and replied, calm and firm, "I understand." Laura's face relaxed into a smug, almost triumphant smile. She thought she'd won. She thought my answer meant I had caved, that I would sacrifice my own mother for her comfort. She strode out of the kitchen, probably to call a friend and brag. I stayed right where I was. I made 2 calls. The first was to a highly rated moving company in the city. "Yes," I said. "I need to schedule a pack up and move for one person's belongings, for the day after tomorrow if possible." The second call was to my mom. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Don't worry about a thing. Your room will be ready by the end of the week." "Yes, I'm sure. Everything is taken care of." Laura presented a choice, and I'm just respecting her decision. Update 1. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in passive aggression. Laura moved through the house like a victorious queen, sighing dramatically and making comments about how difficult decisions are necessary for the health of our marriage. She went so far as to print out glossy brochures for absurdly expensive and distant retirement communities in Florida, scattering them on the coffee table as if she were being helpful. "I've done some research," she announced. "Only the best for Evelyn, of course." The hypocrisy was nauseating. I said nothing. I spent those days in the guest suite, deep cleaning, rearranging furniture, and putting on fresh linens. I installed grab bars in the bathroom and set up a small TV in front of the armchair. Laura watched me work and completely misinterpreted my actions. She thought I was just preparing the room to stage my mother's furniture before shipping it off to a facility. Her approval was almost as repulsive as her ultimatum. On Wednesday morning, right on schedule, the moving truck pulled into our long driveway. Laura saw it from the kitchen window, and her face lit up. "Oh, good. They're here," she said cheerfully, walking to the front door to greet them. For her, this was the final step in her victory, the permanent removal of the problem. "You must be here for Evelyn's things," she said cordially to the foreman, a large man holding a clipboard. He frowned and checked his papers. "No, ma'am. My work order is for the belongings of a Mrs. Laura Harrington. Packing and transport to a climate-controlled storage unit downtown." Laura's smile froze, then collapsed. "What? That's ridiculous. There must be a mistake. My husband arranged this for his mother, Evelyn." "Is your husband Michael Harrington?" the foreman asked. "Yes," she replied, growing impatient. "Well, Mr. Harrington himself booked the service, and the name on the order is Laura Harrington. All rooms except the downstairs guest suite and the main office. That's it," he concluded in a tone that left no room for argument. Laura's head snapped around, searching for me. I was standing in the entryway, watching everything in silence. The face that was, seconds ago, filled with smug satisfaction was now a picture of pure shock, followed by dawning horror. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this? What have you done?" I stepped forward, speaking calmly, meeting the panic rising in her eyes. "You gave me an ultimatum, Laura. You said I had to choose, my mom or you. I understood your position. You made it clear that your staying here was conditional on my mother's absence. You made your choice, and I'm respecting it. I hired these professionals to make your departure as smooth as possible." For a few seconds, she just stared, unable to process what she was hearing. Then, her composure shattered. "Leave?" she shrieked, her voice echoing through the foyer. "You can't kick me out of my own house." And there it was. The final moment, the ultimate revelation. "That's the core of your mistake, Laura," I replied, with a sadness that surprised me. "This isn't your house." I went into the office and returned with a folder. From it, I pulled a copy of the property deed. I bought this house with funds my father left me years ago, long before our marriage. The title, the deed. It has only ever been in my name. It has always been my separate property. You made it clear you would not live under this roof with my mother. My mother is moving in this Friday. Therefore, you can no longer live here. You made the choice. I'm just dealing with the consequences." I handed her the paper. Laura stared at the document, her face ashen. The legal text was complex, but two things were crystal clear at the top of the page: my name and my name alone. The entire foundation of her life, the beautiful house she flaunted, the status, the image, turned to dust in her hands. She had played her final card, only to discover I held the entire deck. Update 2. Laura's reaction was explosive. The shrieks of "my house" morphed into sobs of betrayal and then to threats. She grabbed her cell phone and dialed 911. "My husband is trying to illegally evict me," she screamed into the phone. The movers, to their credit, paused their work and stood by the truck, visibly uncomfortable, awaiting instructions. I calmly told the foreman to have his crew take a break. There was a domestic situation to resolve. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Laura met them on the lawn, putting on a dramatic performance, tearfully recounting how her cruel husband was throwing her onto the street because of his sick, old mother. The officers listened patiently. Then they came to speak with me at the front door. I invited them in and calmly explained everything. I showed them the deed to the house, making it clear the property was mine alone, acquired before the marriage. I showed them our marriage certificate. I explained the ultimatum. My wife stated that if my mother came to live with me, she would leave. I have accepted her decision. My mother is moving in. I have arranged and paid for my wife's belongings to be moved into a storage unit. She is welcome to stay with friends or family while we sort out the divorce. The 2 officers exchanged a look. This was not the simple eviction she had described. One of them turned to Laura and explained, as gently as possible, "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. Since your name isn't on the deed, you don't have an ownership claim to the property. We can't compel him to allow you to stay here." The silence that followed was deafening. "We recommend you contact a lawyer, ma'am." Defeated and humiliated, Laura finally seemed to understand she no longer held any power there. She called her sister, and within an hour, she was gone, leaving with a slam of the door and muttered curses. I told the movers they could continue. For the next 5 hours, they efficiently packed 20 years of Laura's life into boxes. The house felt emptier, but at the same time, lighter. The next day, the legal attacks began. I received a furious letter from a high-profile divorce attorney she had hired. The document demanded Laura's immediate reinstatement to the marital home, an obscene amount of monthly alimony, half the value of the property, and a long list of other supposed entitlements. My lawyer, a calm and meticulous man I had thankfully consulted years prior for estate planning, was unfazed. He responded with a short, factual letter. He attached a notarized copy of the deed, proving the house was acquired with inherited, non-marital funds, along with clear financial statements. He also included a formal divorce settlement proposal, offering a generous but legally correct division of the assets actually acquired during the marriage, our savings, retirement accounts, and investments built over the years. There was also an offer of temporary rehabilitative alimony, based on the fact that Laura, college-educated and 42, was perfectly capable of re-entering the workforce. The smear campaign began almost immediately. Laura painted herself as the absolute victim. Her friends, people who had eaten at my table, posted vague messages on social media about monsters who discard faithful wives. I received angry texts. To my true friends and family, I explained the truth, the ultimatum. They were appalled on my behalf and rallied around me. Amidst all that chaos, on a quiet Friday, I brought my mom home. I settled her into her new room, the very one from which Laura's designer shoes had been removed just 2 days before. My mom felt terribly guilty about the whole mess. I took her hand and was honest. "This is not your fault, Mom. This was all the consequence of a choice Laura made. You are home. You are safe. That's all that matters." That night, we had dinner together in the quiet kitchen, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt full of real, unconditional love. Final update. It has been 8 months now since the day the moving truck arrived. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. It was an ugly, drawn-out process, not because Laura had a strong legal case, but because she refused to accept reality. Her lawyer tried everything to lay claim to the house. They argued a commingling of assets due to renovations. My lawyer presented detailed records showing everything was paid for from my personal salary, not joint accounts. They argued emotional distress. They argued anything they could. In the end, the law was the law. The house was mine. The premarital asset was protected. The final settlement was very close to what my lawyer had originally proposed. Laura received 50% of the assets actually acquired during the marriage, a significant 6-figure sum, plus temporary alimony for 3 years so she could get back on her feet. It was a far cry from the multi-million-dollar windfall she imagined from the house. Today, she lives in a modern but small 2-bedroom apartment downtown. From what I hear, she has had a hard time adjusting to the sharp drop in her standard of living. The high society friends she was so afraid of displeasing have mostly vanished. Without the impressive house for parties and a husband to finance her lifestyle, she became far less interesting to that circle. She had to go back to work in marketing, the career she had abandoned 20 years ago. By all accounts, she is bitter, unhappy, and tells anyone who will listen that I stole her life. My life, in contrast, has become smaller, quieter, and infinitely richer. Caring for my mom in her final phase of life isn't easy. There are hard days, moments of fear and sadness. But there are also moments of profound grace. We spend evenings looking through old photo albums. I make her my dad's favorite soup. We watch old movies together. I'm giving her the gift of passing with dignity, surrounded by love in a home, not an institution. It's the most important work I have ever done. Laura thought she was giving me an ultimatum between a wife and a mother. She was wrong. What she offered me was a choice between a life built on the superficial foundations of social status and conditional affection, and a life built on the pillars of duty, compassion, and unconditional love. She thought her ultimatum was a show of power, but it wasn't an act of power at all. It was simply a revelation of her character. The most satisfying part of this whole story wasn't watching her leave or winning in the end. It was the quiet realization that by honoring the cruel choice she forced upon me, I had, without realizing it, chosen a better, truer life for myself. I chose my mom, and in doing so, I chose my own humanity. Comment. After reading a story like this, I always find myself thinking about the difficult choices we face in life. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are really about defining who we are and what we stand for. Setting a firm boundary is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-respect. True kindness also means protecting your own peace from those who would disturb it. Each of us is responsible for the love and energy we allow into our inner circle. The real choice is often between who you are and who someone else wants you to be. Healing begins the moment you choose integrity over convenience. Learning to choose your own peace is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. I hope you always find the courage to honor your own values. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.